We have the Acolyte episode 7. I don't necessarily think it went the way that some positive thinkers like us were going to go, especially after the last few episodes. I mean, I don't think there's any way to sugarcoat this. So, Kevin, what we're going to do this week is just hop right in. So, I think this may be our most negative review of the Acolyte. We still have good stuff to say, some good things, but like I don't think either one of us are too thrilled with the episode. But we'll start off, per the usual, with the Acolyte with our initial thoughts and grades. So, in my breakdown, I didn't give a grade because honestly, I was kind of miffed, and so I didn't even really remember to do it. But my initial thoughts is like that was, like could have been an email type of thing, like that could have been an email. They could have put in flashbacks here and there throughout the whole season. They could have just had like an hour long episode 3. If they really needed it split up, I think flashbacks would have been the better way to do it, because we didn't know the details, but we knew that the Jedi were going to look bad. They kind of let us know. Soul keeps saying, I've got to own up for the past or whatever. And so we had an idea, especially since May was on like a bloodlust to get rid of everybody. Like we knew the Jedi didn't do good things. So they could have filled in those gaps in probably 10 minutes, just here and there. But they chose to do a 40-minute episode that felt filler-ish. I hate to say filler, but it felt filler-ish, and you should never use filler when you only have 8 episodes. So my grade's low. I'd give it, I liked it better than 3. I think I gave 3 a grade higher than I should have, because we were going to give it time to develop. I would regrade episode 3. I'd probably give that a 3 or a 4, and I would give this a 4 or a 5. Not very good at all.
Pretty much in the exact same spot. And I thought about the same thing. I was like, I was kind of episode 3 at the time, because I was like, well, we'll see where this goes, right?
Yeah,
obviously the story's not complete, but no, I think this episode made me like episode 3 less.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm with you, man. I'd put episode 3 at like a 4 and this at like a 5, just because like we mentioned, there's some things in this episode I thought were kind of cool that I kind of like, but when I sat down and wrote my list of what did I like and what I didn't like far outweighed the what I liked. So
yeah,
it's kind of a bummer.
And
you and I, we've been enjoying the show, and we had high hopes for these last 2 episodes. So
I think they just wasted a lot of time.
I hope that they at least wrap up our present day story well. I do hope they can do that, but yeah, this one was a bit of a bummer for me.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of staying in those initial thoughts, it almost seems, and this is dipping into the predictions a little, so like I'll touch on it more, but it almost seems like they're banking on a season 2. And with Bob Iger, I don't know that they should be banking on a season 2. He's not the happy-go-lucky, throw money down the toilet type of guy. He's the cleanup guy. So I don't know that maybe the showrunners should have been setting this up as an incomplete story without having a 2 guaranteed. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see. There's still episode 8. It could turn out well, but we'll hop into it.
It felt different when we had 2 episodes left, right?
Yeah.
Now that
it did, yeah.
We've burned an episode and not done anything with that present day kind of situation, it does make things feel a little more on the edge, being rushed here. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, hope and not, also we'll like they had so much momentum, episode 3, like people were, you just go look at any of your favorite Star Wars creator, for the most part, their videos. Mm-hmm. And episodes 1 and 2, kind of a mixed bag. Some people really liked it. There were still like the people that just hate it we're going to hate it no matter what. Episode 3, you gave the people that really hated it a lot of ammunition. Plus the people that enjoyed it didn't necessarily care for episode 3. But then you go 4, 5, 6, and everyone all of the content out there, at least that I was putting out, and a modest channel, small, but like some positive stuff like, hey, I didn't care for a lot of what happened, but now I'm enjoying it.
For sure.
This week just turned back time to episode 3. People are like,
Yeah.
what the heck? And so I don't know. I think, again, we haven't seen the whole season, but it seems like an unwise decision to throw in 2 big negative episodes. And they had to think like, these don't necessarily fit.
Yeah.
Someone had to think that. So I don't know. But before we hop into our episode review, shameless plug here. The channel here, Padawan Pop's channel, now has memberships. So for only $2.99 a month, you can get all kinds of cool perks. Again, this channel isn't about that, but if you would like to support me, that would be awesome. I'll link that below. You'll get some early access to things. You'll get some members only polls. You'll get some members only content. And I will always reply to your comment if you're a member. There may be a few other perks down there as well. So check it out if you're interested. If you're not, that's fine too. But if you are interested, that would be great. The support has been really awesome on this channel. Wouldn't happen without people like you watching. So do appreciate that. But now the episode review, really kind of getting into the nitty gritty. Kevin, I know you have some notes on it, but really quick rundown of the episode. There's not a lot new. Like, we see the Jedi, like, it starts out new. They're looking around and stuff. We learn about the Vergence. We learn that the planet used to be uninhabitable. Now it's lush and habitable, and so they think there's a Vergence creating life there. You get that little throwback to the High Republic, like the Great Disaster. I missed that
incident, yeah,
the first time, yeah, and then I was like, oh, okay,
yeah.
I have read that much of that first book, because I try to read that book over and over, and I get like an hour into the audiobook and and turn it off. But
yeah,
I am familiar, so you get the High Republic teaser there for the book fans. Then it's essentially where we were. Like, Soul is doing some serious snooping on the twins. He goes to the fortress or whatever. Now, I made a Princess Bride prediction last week that it would be like Soul reading the story, but it was a different Princess Bride thing that happened where he scales that wall, like the guy on Princess Bride, at the beginning where he's climbing the mountain or whatever. It was kind of reminiscent of that, but he's really snooping hard. He's like decided he wants to steal a kid to be his Padawan, essentially. Like, he has just got the fever for kidnapping a child, which is strange that you've got like this Qui-Gon Jinn figure and you just tear him down. Like, he can have a shady past without just like killing the character. But they do that. You get all the drama that you see. All the Jedi show up. Things go south. They go back, test the kids, go back again. Things go further south. We get a little bit of revelation that May didn't mean to burn everything down, but she like set a book on fire. So don't know what she expected. But she had an instant regret.
Flammable device.
Yeah, so that happens. Soul is the one who kills Anastasia, which I wasn't expecting that necessarily. I knew he would have his hands dirty, but he took her out. Kel Naka was cool, like being possessed by the Zabrak woman. Cannot stand her, but that was cool. Probably the highlight of the episode.
Yeah.
And then Soul having to choose between May and Osha. That should have been a very like weighty, complex scene, probably. And it lasted about 15 seconds, and he's just like, gonna let May die.
Well, and to your, like, you mentioned it, like with your prediction that this would be like a Princess Bride scenario with Soul kind of reflecting back. I think that would have benefited this story a lot.
Yeah.
Because we get a very different Soul in the past than the Soul is current. And that's fine, right? People can be different. People can change. I think it's a little over the top how emotional he makes decisions in the past.
Yeah.
But it's hard for a viewer when we don't see anything that takes place as to why he changed or how he changed or how he went from being that Soul to this Soul. This was an opportunity.
And there's no time to explain it.
Well, that's the thing, is if they had done what you said, I feel like having his thoughts mixed in with this, like as he's explaining to May, like, this is who I used to be, this was a problem, and kind of explaining his faults, and then that decision, like how he had to choose between the two of them. Hearing current Soul's thoughts on that would have benefited, I feel like, this story significantly, because then you're bridging this very different Soul from the past and this Soul that we have now that we're kind of invested in. But the way they left it is just they're two very different characters, and we don't really have any insight as to what he was thinking or how he changed from that person. We're just kind of left with two very different characters that seem like they don't match.
Yeah.
So I wish they had done what you had said. I feel like that would have worked out a lot better.
I mean, or if nothing else, just like let him mess up, but don't let him look incompetent or corrupt, like super corrupt. You know, because someone can, or Anakin Skywalker, right? Best of intentions really slips up. You know, I mean, like gets caught up in a rough weekend and ends the whole galaxy as we know it, right? Like that was really rough for Anakin, really messed up. But you can kind of see where he would fall into that, right? Like he had kind of been inching towards these attachments over the whole course of the prequel trilogy. And it's tragic when it happens. Well, Soul, you're just watching him like, I really want a Padawan. Oh, here's someone I can kidnap.
Yeah.
Oh, I killed her mom. Oh, I chose her and let her sister fall into the pit. Oh, I helped her cheat on the Jedi thing and kind of manipulated her. And like all of these things, it just seems completely out of character from the Qui-Gon like soul we have, especially when you say like, oh, we kind of modeled this character on Qui-Gon. Well, he would never have done any of that. Like he would have been, the wherewithal to not be so unbalanced. And Soul is like incredibly unbalanced here. Yeah. Just really strange.
And again, there's nothing wrong with having a character who changes, but we don't see any of that. That's all. We just have to assume it happens at some point.
It's like the Luke Skywalker change off screen from 6 to 8. You want to see a little bit of how that happens.
But it's like a major hero complex where he automatically assumes there's a problem here and only the Jedi can fix it, right? Even though he knows nothing about what's going on. And I get what they're trying to do, right? Like that he's kind of riddled with anxiety and fear that these girls are going to get hurt. And only the Jedi can fix it. But I feel like it was too far in that direction to where there was no common sense, right? There was no stop and think about it moment.
It's not believable.
And for a Jedi, right, that should have been what you've been training to do your whole life, right? Is to stop and think about a situation and listen to, the inner peace and the calm. I told you, I feel like he and Indara were meant to be on opposite ends of a spectrum, but it was just too extreme. They were two extreme opposites where neither moved any towards that middle ground. And so it makes them look like just incompetent. And so one of the things I thought about is he's telling this story to Maze. It sounds like he's just saying, hey, so all that bad stuff that happened, we just messed up. We covered it. I don't see how any of this is making anything right? There's no justification or explanation. It's just like we were really incompetent, right? We made
that's a great point. Like
I feel like that's all he's telling her right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they're supposed to be on the same team, I mean, if because we thought going into the last episode, it would probably be May and Soul that kind of buddy up. How do you get to that point?
I thought there would be something that changes May's perception. But I don't see anything in this side of the story that would change her perception on the Jedi.
Things essentially happened the way she saw it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we were always thinking that it would be a little bit skewed. And essentially everything she saw... Now, Zabrak mom, she caused a lot of problems. But May also was kind of involved with that because she was instigating the whole situation. So... for 40 minutes of an episode that really dragged for me, it seems like maybe 60 minutes would have been good to add in a little more flavor to it to make it better. But I don't trust that 60 minutes would have dug them out of the hole. Like, it just didn't work.
If I look back, one of the reasons I really don't like this episode is we've talked a lot about what we thought happened within this, and a lot of it's been broadcast pretty clearly, right? We know the Jedi messed up. We know that they were not necessarily the paragons that they believe themselves to be in this situation. So other than some minute details, like what did we actually find out that was different in this 40-minute retelling of this event?
just two
Not
things
a
that I can
lot that
think
we
of.
haven't sat around and already said, oh, the Jedi did something wrong. They did this bad.
Yeah.
One of them killed her mom. Like this is all stuff that they've
Yeah.
broadcast pretty clearly throughout this story. And I feel like as much as this show presented, here's episode 3, this thing happened, it's in the past, and then we drag on for several episodes without touching back on it, you're hinging a lot on a big reveal. And I don't think there was any sort of big reveal in this. There was nothing that I feel like justified holding off so long on dragging people along with this past event, because it's a lot of what we've talked about. It's a lot of what we had guessed was happening. Again, with a few minor things. And yeah, and like I said, there's some things in this episode I genuinely did like, but overall it was tough to watch after the last couple episodes that I had enjoyed.
Yeah, they were. Well, the last 3 I thought were like, man, we're getting in
I
a
enjoyed
groove.
the last 3 episodes a lot.
And so also just kind of, I guess, looking at this, you mentioned we didn't learn any, like we learned very few new things. I can only think of 2 new things. I can think of May didn't mean to burn things down, but she still started the fire. So her intentions were a little different, I suppose. So maybe she wasn't so far gone until she saw Soul, and we learned Soul was the one who killed Mother Anastasia. That
was bizarre.
Is there anything different there? Like
the Virgins, I guess, was new information, but that doesn't really change anything.
Well, especially since in the 2nd or 3rd episode, they're like, oh, the Jedi are going to be mad if they figured out how you made these kids. Well, if they figured it out and it's something that they were also looking for, then it's just like confirming what the Jedi already thought about the place.
Yeah, it muddied some things too, because they started speculating, like something about one consciousness split into 2 and how that Virgins in the Force could do that. It's like, well, whose consciousness? Like, what are we even talking about? Like, who split a consciousness into, like, we still don't even know how this happened.
And maybe there's some info about that.
That this place is strong in the Force, right? And so, I don't know. It wasn't my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I know like we're sounding really negative, but as we've always said, when this show gives us reasons to, we're not going to pump the sunshine. Like, I just don't see very many positives. Let's go to Torben. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Because we touched on it, do you feel like Soul killing Anastasia made sense to you?
Why did he even do it? What was she going to go? So she was doing the little Harry Potter thing. What was she? Who was she going to possess?
That's a good question. Because May was also starting to kind of whatever she was doing to herself she was also doing to May. I don't know if they were trying to like teleport. So one thing I did like the Night Sister magic that we've seen already, right? So like the possession thing we've seen in Rebels. If you remember, Kanan and Sabine get possessed by the Night Sister spirits.
That's season 3.
We've seen in the Clone Wars, like Mother Talzin could like poof teleport and go away.
Yeah.
Now I don't know what she was doing, right? But it freaked Soul out enough to where he thought the right decision was just to go ahead and stab her right there.
Yeah, that's weird too.
So I don't know. I like that Soul killed her because I think that does provide a pretty compelling moment for Osha. In terms of her viewing him as like this mentor and father. And it does, you think back to that scene in episode 3 where he's dragging her through and she sees her mom and she starts freaking out. Like, now we know Soul's watching this scene knowing that he killed her. Like, it gives some decent emotional weight to that. But I don't know that the way he killed her felt really like it made sense to me.
It was a strange scene.
Kind of freaked out because she was doing something, and then he assumed this was Osha when it was May, but he knows they're twins, so I don't know why he automatically thought it was Osha. There were just and I know a lot of this is rushed, right? Like these 8-episode series, it's hard, and I think I've heard other people talk about
this.
Is
it like, that hard though?
It should have been simplified into a movie, or it should have been given more time, right?
But is it that hard?
Well, no, it's not unless you're determined to pack in a story into a time that it doesn't necessarily fit. That's hard. And that's where I think they've got to figure out the stories they want to tell, because Disney's not, they're not putting out these big, hefty, long episodes with long seasons, right? We know we're
except
getting
for
short
Andor.
form. And even then, it's not, it's short compared to other shows, right?
That's true.
The
Yeah.
episodes were long, which
Well,
I
and it was
appreciate.
12 episodes versus 8.
But then you also, and if you had to compare, the writing in Andor was
So
probably
good.
better than anything else we've ever had, right? It had the time to develop some things. So part of this, I do think Disney's got to figure out what they want to do. Do they want to
How
write really
many?
compelling stories that take time to develop, or do we want to kind of go? I don't know. It's hard. But then you have season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, which were great, and they were
Perfectly
not very
timed.
long seasons.
Yeah, but you look who was writing it, though.
Yeah, it
And
also
producing.
focused on, it zoomed in on fewer characters, I think.
Had one focal
It's a
point
whole
with
nother
just
discussion, maybe
minor branches.
maybe for
Yeah,
our
yeah.
post-mortem thing.
For
but
the
like,
autopsy, yeah.
this has tried to look at a lot of different things, which I think has hurt it.
It's just frustrating, I guess. Like,
Yeah,
because
I agree.
so he takes out Mother Anastasia, but then
Yeah.
he's not gonna fight Coral, who is probably one of the worst written Star Wars characters I have ever seen. She's just like screaming like the monster from the Goonies, and he's like just slapping around the staff
That's a
she
good point.
has.
Like right after he kills her, he goes completely like non-violent. I'm just going to deflect all your blows.
If I was that actress playing her, I might have quit. Like when I got that, because like they just made it looks dumb. Like the way, kind of the Rose Tico treatment, where they just pegged her into a place that she didn't deserve to be in. Similar deal here, and so that didn't make sense. But then she took over Kelnaka. That was pretty cool.
That was cool.
I don't know
Wookiee
that I'm
Jedi
done
was pretty
complaining
awesome.
yet, though. So we'll wait till we get to there. But Torben, I mean, just not a good character either. Like he's a punk.
Homesick, Will.
Yeah,
He's homesick.
of Coruscant. I mean, I want to go back. I
wants to
don't
go
want to be
back
in
to
the
Coruscant.
woods. I mean, and then
like
someone
Coruscant.
commented on something I've posted, and it was bringing up his timeline as well. So he's a Padawan here, 16 years prior. So somehow within the 6 years of him being a homesick kid as a Padawan, he becomes a knight and then a master, so he can meditate for 10 years.
Yeah,
You
how
think
long did
that
they say
kid's
he's been meditating?
at least 10 years is what they said. So
Yeah,
can you see that kid turning into a master 6 years from that episode?
Yeah. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Poor writing.
Because at this point, Soul's just a knight, it seems, because he calls Adara master throughout the sequences. So I mean, he's not even a master right now.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't even know how that kid gets to be a master.
Well, and so I looked up. I was interested in this. It took Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Phantom Menace, which he'd been a Padawan for a while at that point, roughly 10-ish years in canon to become a master after the Phantom Menace. From knight to master. So you talk about one of the better Jedi ever taking that long, and then you've got homesick kid figuring it out in 6 years, roughly.
Why? I
don't know.
The homesick thing I didn't get.
They did nobody any favors.
Like he's willing to go directly against orders from his master and potentially start a battle with these witches because he's homesick. Like, to me, it would have made more sense if he was just angry, right? Like they invaded his mind. Like I feel like anger's hate.
That's what I thought they were going to do too.
That's a much bigger motivator, right?
Yeah.
Than, I just really want to go home.
Didn't you think though, like kind of going into this episode, he was going to get possessed and be the one that caused like a lot of issues? Yeah. I thought that was going to be so cool, but then it was Kelnaka who got possessed, which was cool. Yeah. But then it was almost at the expense of Torben, though.
Watching him handle Torben and Soul is pretty awesome. He's a pretty formidable force.
To wrap up the complaints, you get to the very end where they go all in on the cover up, where Endara is kind of like, okay, yes, you've messed up, but you've already taken everything from this girl, so now are you going to go turn yourself in and take whatever last hope she has? I don't know that that's a good enough reason for him not to have to fess up to it, because now you're just compounding on the issues. And so you're supposed to make the Jedi look bad, going into the prequels. I get that. They've got to go from this high point to where they could completely unravel. That has to happen somehow. You have to get that explanation. But I don't think a group of 4 Jedi who are just like out of their league is a good reflection of the order as a whole going under. Just
Yeah,
my
because
thoughts.
I feel like you look at the order, the council, in the prequel movies, and they make some pretty bad decisions, right? And they do some questionable things. Um, they're pretty prideful, right? Like asking Anakin to spy on Dooku is pretty sketchy, right? That's not really
Yep.
the Jedi way.
On Palpatine, yeah.
Anyway, but yes, thank you, Palpatine. But this isn't that. Like, it's not like they're proud and cocky and arrogant. It's like they're just clueless. And that's a very different picture that I just wasn't expecting to see of the Jedi, because I don't ever think the issue is that they were clueless. I think the issue is that they got too high on themselves and thought that they had the right to say and do and justify anything.
The
Whereas
hubris.
these guys feel like they don't know what's going on. So
hubris and dumb are 2 different things.
Yes, very much so.
And you can compare it here. Like, I don't know. But that's the negative aspect of the show. Sorry, like, if you didn't want the negativity, we've held it in for a really long time and we've been really positive for a long time, but this one just kind of was like the tipping point. But there were some cool things as well. So that there was cool thing, I guess, not cool things. There was cool thing.
There were a few things
so I really liked getting to see Kelnaka. We wanted that. Yeah. Now it was not the way we expected, which is fine. But really cool to see. Seeing a 7-foot tall guy like wield a lightsaber, he was, I don't want to say he was kind of stiff, but not in like a bad way. Like, he was just, blows coming down,
a lot of force.
And so that was pretty cool to see. And then like slinging people around. Essentially, he couldn't be bested physically. It had to be Indara, like, getting, the witch out of his mind. And so it kind of lends to that credence of a Wookiee Jedi unrestrained is like, it's probably as good as it gets.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
As good as it can get.
What did Indara do that just like killed all those witches? They just all dropped dead after she...
Well, so I did have a question about that. Like, were they, because they're all doing their little swaying things, kind of interesting. Yeah. And May had mentioned something about like sacrifice or whatever, like they all had to sacrifice for something. She mentioned that talking about ascension to Indara and Soul. So it made me wonder, like, was that kind of their thing? They all kind of went in on this whole deal. And so once they get kind of to the end of the road, did that take everything they had, or did she actually like do some kind of switch and take them out? I don't know. I didn't know what you thought about that.
No, that makes sense though, because they already talked about how they're stronger when they do things together.
Yeah.
So it seems like they did all kind of join in on this effort. I think it was because Coral, she's the one who went all misty vapor, whatever.
Yeah.
So I guess they were providing the energy it took to overtake his mind. I don't know. That is kind of a gray area, and maybe that once it was done, they were done.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I did think also watching that scene, like when they're talking about who she's going to possess, because Torben's like, my mind is, sealed up or whatever.
Like, you shouldn't have brought him here, is what she said.
Yeah. Yeah, and she's talking about cool. not him or something. And to me, that reminded me like almost of a theme park ride. You know how like when you're doing it and then there will be like the uh-oh and the roller coaster drops? Like, I thought it was that moment. Like, oh, it's the Wookiee. And that was a really cool scene. Like, when, because he's standing up there in that moonlight. Yeah. They shot that really well.
Yeah. Agreed.
I thought May... Yeah, so I thought May was kind of a high point for her in this story. Like, I'm not overly interested in that aspect, but when she's on the ship, I just assumed that she was just lying through her teeth the whole time. But she does lie, but then she's like very open with what she wants. So she's like, no, I'm really into this ascension thing. Like, I want to stay here and this coven and all that stuff. Like, I thought having that was very human of her,
Yeah.
like not evil. And it was just kind of like, okay, leave her alone then.
Yeah.
Like Jedi, leave her be. She's very direct with what she wants. So I liked that, and then I liked that Anastasia was going to let Osha go anyways.
Yeah, it definitely may feel a lot less like an antagonist with that
Mhm.
scene, and with how we see Coral just like really pushing her
Yeah,
to, because she's loyal to her family, right?
right.
That's not necessarily a bad trait, but if
Yeah.
your family starts doing some bad things and you're still following, well,
Well, and they're
you're going to end up
kids
doing
too.
bad things. Right. And so, yeah, I did think that it helped her a little bit in that.
That was a good scene. And
Yeah.
then Anastasia like telling Soul, I was gonna
Yeah.
let Osha go.
Yeah.
Like I did like that because it did give a little weight to like, oh, they did really mess up. Like all they needed to do was be normal and
Yeah.
things would have went fine. But they
She
weren't
ended up, yeah, I mean,
normal.
she ended up being really the most reasonable of the group. Um, Although I don't know
Yeah.
how reasonable it is that you let your, what, how old are these kids? 8, 9? I don't know. What are they supposed to be?
Yeah, 10 or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, you let your 10-year-old decide their future. It's like if my kid wanted to run away. It's like, you really want to? That's cool. I go follow your
Go with
dreams.
the
Run away.
strangers that we don't like. Yeah.
So yeah, despite the fact that she was the most reasonable, I still don't get like letting a kid decide that they're gonna just
Yeah.
go off, and especially people you don't super entirely trust. I don't know.
Yeah. Not a lot of positive for this episode. I was watching the
Yeah.
timer. Do you have any more positives?
Um, I talked about. I do like that Soul is the one who killed NSA, because I do think that's going to provide.
Yeah.
I'm still engaged with our current situation in the present. I'm interested
That's
to see
good.
what
Yeah.
happens. We'll talk about with our predictions, but I definitely think that lends to a pretty dramatic and traumatic moment for Osha.
Yeah.
I didn't mind I liked the Vergence thing. Um, I liked the idea that there was this planet that was supposed to be lifeless, but had apparently just recovered because there's a strong force presence there.
Yeah.
It gave a little explanation to the twins, not a whole lot, but within canon and legends, we've seen like strong force wellsprings create life,
Yeah.
right? Like
Mhm.
when Yoda goes to
The
that wellspring of life in Clone
Dagobah.
Wars, like we find out
Oh,
that's
well,
where
I was going to say in
midichlorians were.
Dagobah as well.
Well, yeah, but that's where midichlorians were born from. That
Mhm.
force nexus, right? That created
Mhm.
life there. And then if you look at, there's no canon right now for where the Mortis gods came from, but in the legend stuff, they were like these force beings that were born into physical bodies through like a force nexus or a force
Mhm.
vergence. And so there's examples of these places like just producing life because it's so strong in the force.
Yeah.
Um, I wish they had made it make sense. Like, so what does that look like? How did this actually happen? We still don't know that. But I like the idea of that. I think it's the best explanation they could have come up with, because it's at least something we've seen. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
And yeah, I guess I'm okay with it. I would have liked more explanation, but we may
yeah,
get that in the next
it's
episode. I
possible.
was going to
Yeah,
talk about that. So like if we're going into predictions, so I'm going to kind of like go, instead of what I think's going to happen, I'm going to kind of meld that in with what I want to happen. So a little bit of both. I do, it could go one of two ways with Osha. Like she puts the helmet on. I think she's gonna like what happens when she puts it on, and she's gonna be bad. That's what I'm
yeah,
hoping. And we talked about that a little bit last week, but I'm thinking she's gonna be bad. Not sure in relation to the stranger how that's gonna work. Um, he's the biggest question mark for me at this point, because I think I'm pretty sure she's going to be bad. May is going to be indifferent, going for Osha, I believe. Soul is also going to be trying, I guess, to get Osha back, I
yeah,
guess. But then you still have Vernestra and the Jedi are going to be trying to find them as well. So I think that's going to be an issue. Vernestra and the stranger probably end up being the point of contention there. She's probably who occupies his time, I guess. And then you have the Osha May Soul, because I'm not 100% sure where Chimere fits into this story that they've got to wrap up with Soul's thing,
yeah.
unless he's just kind of manipulating. but then you've still got Vernestra to deal with. So I don't know about that. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, we've speculated how he's connected, but he's not really connected to any of their stories yet.
yeah,
He is still kind of an outlier. Obviously, well, I don't know about obviously, we can assume that he knows everything that May told him. I'm
yes,
assuming
which was
she told
truthful.
him, right? So he would know that Soul killed their mom, which he could tell Osha. Um, and I'd be curious how. Honestly, I was thinking about this. I was curious how quickly they might get rid of Soul, because they've pretty quickly eliminated characters as they've filled purposes. Um, like I wouldn't be entirely surprised if they show up on that planet and he dies pretty quickly to her. Like she's found out what he did,
Yeah,
and she's just in anger-fueled rage mode, hatred, um, and won't see or hear or listen to anything. And she's got the mask on, and just maybe she kills him right off the bat. I don't know.
yeah,
Uh,
could be.
I don't know that he's going to stick around much longer though. I think
I don't. Yeah, I don't know.
I as much as I don't know that that's where the focus of the show has felt the most successful. I think ultimately it's going to come down to Osha and May, right? Like that's where they're going to focus. I think the
That's the
majority of
story. Yeah,
the resolution of the story. As much as I'm more interested maybe in Soul and Chimere, um, I think that's where it's heading is really going to be between them. That's where the core of the whatever resolution we get is going to be between. I think the other characters are going to play some roles, but they're going to be more external factors for that,
yeah.
rather than the main characters. I think.
Well, I think someone's going to kill May. Whether I would say the prime candidates would be Chimere or Vernestra, one of those two.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chimere would make a lot of sense just because, like, she's the failed Padawan.
He was already trying to.
Yeah, so that would make a lot of sense. But Vernestra could show up and kind of know she's the assassin, anyways, and act kind of rashly there. So that's a potential. Another potential is somehow like you've got. I don't know how this would work, but you could have Soul kind of being the last one standing, but Chimere getting away or something. And then Vernestra shows up and decides the cover up for that would be taking Soul out
Blaming it on
and
him.
or killing him. Yeah, like blaming it on him, killing him,
Yeah.
and she's the one who goes back and corrupts everything. That's an interesting take as well. Probably not likely, but they could do that. But I think I thought a long time that no one could make it that was aware, but I think she could and still not know there's a Sith and still show back up and cover things up.
Yeah, I think so because obviously her goal this whole time has been to keep things quiet and not let things be known that would hurt the Jedi, right? Obviously, Jedi being murdered and murdering each other is not good for business, and so yeah, I mean, if she does not know about the existence of Chimere, I could definitely see her going back and just being like, "Rogue Jedi, it's taken care of, no problems, nothing to worry about," and just keeping it hush hush. Now, I don't know that Chimere gets away.
Yeah,
I kind of feel like he bites the dust here.
I think Osha. So I think the most likely, probably of all of this, is Osha just takes everybody out that's left, and she goes bad. Turns out they're on Baldemnik, which is where Plagueis and Tenebris are fond of, right? For the Cortosis.
We've
I would
already seen
suppose
that Cortosis
Tenebris.
vein in the cave. Yeah.
Yep. So it's going to be Baldemnik, or at least the canon version of that.
Yeah.
And then you have the Master showing up at the end to his, layer of Cortosis that Chimere was keeping watch over, but everyone's dead except Osha. And you go into this story of Osha being, an apprentice to whoever this Master is that eventually gets us to the prequel trilogy. That would make a lot of sense. I think people would be happy with that. Now, does that mean I think that's going to happen? At this point, I don't know.
Man, I don't know. Do we know the runtime? We probably don't know the runtime yet.
I haven't seen any leaks on that.
Yeah,
Short, probably. They've all been short.
They have been. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's definitely ways that they can round it out that it feels satisfying at this point. I mean, we've had 2 episodes that were not very well received by us, but we've
Or
enjoyed
very
the
well
rest of the
written.
show by and large, and
Yeah.
so there's still a point where they could finish it out, and I would enjoy the closure of the story.
Yeah, especially
But
if it picks back up with 6
but not if
and
it.
acts like 7 never
Yeah,
happened.
yeah, yeah. But not if, like, if Soul goes back to acting like Soul from before, like, I'm gonna have a hard time with that, right? Like,
Yeah,
if he
because you
goes
just
back to being
wasted
like
2
super
episodes.
emotional
Yeah.
and just, if all that's dictating what he thinks is right is just what he feels in the moment, because I feel like that's really what he was. That, like, I'm gonna have a hard time with that. So I feel like
Yeah.
supposedly, right? He told Osha he had made peace with it. They have that conversation, and so I want to see what that looks like at this point. What does it look like that he's made peace with this now that it's coming to a head? I do want to see how that's portrayed in his character.
Are they
So I
going to
do want
pick
to see
back
that.
up with the fact he can read minds? Or are they just going to keep like mentioning that in passing? That
Who can
like
read
he
minds?
reads soul. That's what Chimere tells him. He was like, take off that mask, and he says, "Why? So you can read my
Oh,
thoughts."
yeah, 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 yeah.
Like, are we just going to forget the fact that Soul's force speciality is reading minds? Like,
Yeah,
that would
that
be
was
something to elaborate on.
yeah, because that's not something a lot of Jet. I mean, we've seen it some, but it's usually like pretty close quarters, ripping things
Yeah,
out of their heads. I guess we saw
that's kind of
Kyrie
what.
do it to Ray.
Yeah, so I think would have been cool to elaborate on that. Maybe they throw something like that in there.
Maybe
Maybe
so.
they, that'd be cool to see.
No,
A lot
I
of
think
potential. Yeah,
I think Osha wears the helmet in this episode, though.
hope so.
I don't think I honestly don't think we see Chimere in the helmet at all. We might see him fight, um, but I don't know.
Oh, there's got to be some action in this.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so. Which, and I will say, the action scenes that May slash Osha,
Top notch.
the actress has been a part of, she's done really well. It's all been hand to
Mm-hmm.
hand so far, but I feel like it's really sold really well on screen. So seeing her fight with a lightsaber might be pretty exciting as well.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, she talked about all the training she did for it, so we might have a pretty cool fight coming up with her and Chimere, or her and Soul. So I think that would be a fun way to close it out. We've got to have some action though.
Yeah. Oh, I think it should probably be a majority, like emotion based action would be a good way to go about this. Another thing that would be cool to see, kind of wish list item outside of like Tenebris showing up or something like that.
Yeah.
What if she ends up, because she needs a saber, because May has Kelnaka's, or not Kelnaka, the yellow saber, Yord's.
No, Yord's. Yes,
Yord's saber.
So many characters.
It would be really cool if Osha ended up with one of the Jedi sabers and like bled it on screen or something. That would be pretty cool.
Well, that would be cool.
Like, we haven't seen that on screen yet, so
maybe he's taught her how to do that in the meantime. I don't know.
If the big EU thing that she decided she's going to bring in is only cortosis, like, not that it's not cool, but you know how Leslie Headland like mentioned that there's going to be like a big thing from the EU in this. If it turns out to just be the cortosis, that's going to be a little disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, cortosis is super cool, but
and it can lead into a big deal. But you don't say we pulled some big stuff from the EU.
Yeah,
and that'd be it.
But the thing is it's not something you should start seeing everywhere now, though, because there was a very limited amount of that stuff. It was hard to find, hard to mine. I mean, it was super, super rare.
I do think that that's just like the gateway into her big reveal. I think that's because you know how they've hinted at everything. Like, this show has been nothing short of spelling out what's going to happen. Well, if you insert cortosis into the story, a Star Wars fan, once you learn what cortosis is, which I had to do, I've read Plagueis and I completely skipped over that. But like, once you figure out the implications of that, what do you think is going to happen next? I think we probably could see something just because of how they've telegraphed everything.
It would be a lot to insinuate and imply and tie together coincidentally for it not to
Yeah.
go that route, right? Between the
Especially as
Cortosis and
obvious
this
as they have
planet
been with
that
everything
seems
else.
to be, about
Unknown.
the planet that we're talking about, like, you would think that those things are tied together for a reason.
Yeah.
So hopefully that, and that is
I
kind
think
of
she
what, as
is.
soon as we all had this show in our minds, that was one of the things we thought about, is the reveal of a Sith Lord, like who it's going to be, who are we going to see. So I don't know. It has been on everybody's minds from the get go. So I hope that it's something that they thoughtfully put in as a way to close out the show.
I would have said after episode 6, yes. After episode 7, I would say not sure.
Yeah,
But it'll
that's
be
fair.
fun. So next week, kind of depending on how it goes, next week's episode will either just be like an episode 8 review, and then the following week will kind of be the review of the Acolyte. If episode 8 is like rock your socks off and it's tenebrous and all this action, like I think we'll have a hard time summing up the whole season. Maybe.
Yeah.
But so we may have 2 more weeks of Acolyte coverage, maybe just one, but a little bit of teaser
TBD.
after it, because we're going to go into like a little lull before Skeleton Crew and then Andor early next year. We're thinking about going into kind of some what if scenarios for Star Wars. So like we might hop on live with people in the chat and have like a what if, the classic is Luke had joined Vader, or what if Anakin never turned to the dark side, or what if Anakin beat Obi-Wan, and just kind of like fan fiction that out, like what we would have liked to have seen. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So that's either coming in 2 or 3 weeks, something along those lines. So something to look forward to. Yeah. So thanks for joining us for this episode. Drop in the comments what you think is going to happen in episode 8. If you want to tell us what you thought about 7, go ahead and go for it. We'd love to hear that too. But let us know what you think is going to happen in 8, and it should be pretty fun to revisit that.